Hello and welcome to SweetSpotDFS. This is a review for both the 2021 WGC Match Play event as well as the 2021 Corales Puntacana. Yes, I'm going to review both, so if you want to skip to one or the other, timestamps will be in the description below. Also on YouTube, the segment or the progress bars cut up into segments. Timestamps are also stored there, so hover over them, it'll show you what those segments are. I'm going to try to do this quick. I don't want to really spend too much time really on either because the match play event itself is kind of wonky, and then the Corales Puntacana is an alternate event, but there are actually some interesting things to go over. So let's start there. We'll start at the Corales Puntacana. Joel Dahmen is your winner. I wasn't really on Joel Dahmen. I also didn't enter a lot of lineups into DraftKings this week, primarily because it was a wait and see. As you can see, we only have 4 years, including this year, of data. So it wasn't, for me, I like to try to make sense of who to pick. And usually I look at the data to try to figure that out. And if there isn't a lot, I'm not very confident in playing, a tournaments, but I'm still curious. So I entered like $3 worth of lineups, and Joel Dahmen wasn't on a single one of them. So no money was made at this tournament for me, but also no investment was lost. Like, I didn't put a lot of money into it. But Joel Dahmen's your winner. Sam Ryder, we'll talk about him a little later. He was definitely someone on my radar. Rafael Campos, I X'd out. Like, I didn't want to play any Rafael Campos because I just didn't think with the field here that it was good. But I also made a comp in the preview video that this is just like the Puerto Rico Open. That's his home tournament, home course. He always does well there. I'm silly to not think he wasn't going to do well here. I'm not going to talk about everybody. Hudson Swafford steps out, or not steps out, but what am I trying to think of? Pops out. There we go. As someone who hasn't really been playing great as of late to show up in these events, he was the defending champion. So maybe I shouldn't be surprised. We see Emiliano Grillo up there. Danny Willett showed up on my model. Yeah, not a lot of data, but I did run a model for it, and he did show up. So really good to see Danny Willett up there. Didn't play any of them, so it doesn't help me whatsoever. And then I'm not going to talk about the rest of the guys, but you can see the top 20 on top. I am going to do a optimal lineup versus a GPP winning lineup. Like I said, I didn't put a lot of money into it, so you can see I'm using the 50-cent GPP. I forget what it's called, like the actual tournament name, but we're going to go with that. That's the highest entry fee that I entered. So again, I didn't invest a lot. But the winning lineup there had Joel Dahmen, Sam Ryder, Emiliano Grillo, Ben Martin, Bryce Garnett, and Chase Seifert, who I was on. Again, I'll talk about him later as well. The winning lineup used 49,900. It scored 533.5 points. Now, the optimal lineup are all the golfers with like little black tick marks right here. I also do have a filter on here sorted by DK points, so you can see those are your top 6 guys. That was Joel Dahmen, Sam Ryder, Michael Gligic, Emiliano Grillo, Graham McDowell, and Rafael Campos, who I obviously chose not to play. So I wasn't anywhere close to the optimal lineup. It used $47,500, and it scored 595 points. So there was about a 60-point discrepancy between those two, meaning obviously there was a lot of room as to making lineups that would have worked. Now, if you've been here before, you kind of know I also try to find a realistic lineup that would beat the GPP winning lineup. So let's go ahead and do that. I didn't really prepare one, but if we were just to highlight over this and use Excel's functions to give us an idea of what would be the closest $50,000 lineup, we can certainly go like this, grab these 3 guys right away. Sure, we can grab Michael Gligic, maybe Danny Willett, and now we have $6,700 we get to work with. Rafael Campos. There's a $50,000 lineup, and this would have beaten the 50-cent GPP winning lineup. Now, this would have required 2 6K golfers, a 7K, a 9K, 2 9Ks, and a 10K golfer. I didn't go over salaries. Again, I don't have a lot of data for this tournament, so even if there was a 2019 tournament, I didn't have their salaries, as you can tell. So I really only had 2020 salaries to go by. So we didn't go over optimal lineups or, past optimal lineups or, historical salaries, what shows up inside the top 10 more so than another's. I didn't have that data. So this is really the first time seeing, not so much first time, but you get what I'm saying. We just don't have enough data to really cover all that information. But this lineup here would have worked. It would have beat that other lineup. Let's see by how much. 582.5 points. So we would have beat it by 50, essentially. Let's go into the strokes gained buckets. This I did talk about a little bit in the preview video for the Corales Puntacana. And I made an interesting point that as we go from left to right, typically when we go left to right, we want more golfers in our pools when we're creating lineups from left to right. So you can see what those buckets are at the top, with the positive off the tee, negative, or I should say positive off the tee, positive putting. It obviously changes over. So go ahead and read that as I scroll over. But typically we're going to see more golfers inside the top 10, top 20 going from left to right. And really it doesn't change for this tournament whatsoever. I thought it might, because if you look at the volume of each bucket, so you can see we had nobody in the strokes gained bucket 1 department. We do have, somewhat in the 2, a little bit more in the 3, but as we continue going over, 4 a little bit more, 5 a little bit more, and then our majority is in this 6 bucket. And if you remember in most of our tournaments that we talk about, strokes gained bucket 6 is one to avoid, primarily because there's really only a handful of golfers there that we've just never heard of. This bucket, let's see how many golfers are actually in this bucket. 55. So just on volume alone, it was, logical to assume, logical to assume we're going to find at least one, but probably a handful of top 10s, top 20s in this bucket just because of how big it is. But not really the case. We have 2 top 10s and their 9th place finishes. So you could have literally avoided this bucket and still would have been okay. Meaning you could have removed, again, 55 golfers. Was that what it was? I already forgot. Yeah, 55 golfers you could have removed from your pool. There was 132 in this field. So you're getting rid of a lot of golfers. And if we still apply the same logic from week in, week out, we could also kind of ignore strokes gained bucket 5, which is crazy. Graham McDowell, Hudson Swafford were in those lineups. Was Graham McDowell part of the... Yeah, so Graham McDowell was in the optimal lineup, so we would have had to have had him. But yeah, we could have actively ignored this group. And I guess he would have been in that realistic lineup too, right? I'm not going to keep going back and forth, but we really could have just chosen golfers from bucket 2, strokes gained bucket 2, and strokes gained bucket 3. Like, there are 8 golfers in this bucket. 8 out of 18, 3 only missed the cut. Likewise, over in strokes gained bucket 2, we had 3 out of 11, top 10, and 2 of them missing the cut. We could have lived in these 2 buckets. And I typically do whenever I'm creating lineups. I usually set my, using the optimizer, I will set my lineups, to have a max exposure of 3 or 3 to 4 of golfers in strokes gained bucket 2. 3 to 4 in strokes gained bucket 3, and then I start going down. So I'll only have 2 out of strokes gained bucket 4, and then usually just 1 each of strokes gained bucket 5 and strokes gained bucket 6. If I would have made an optimizer for this tournament, I think I would have done better. But I'll tell you what my strategy was, and it's going to go with those strokes gained buckets. So obviously I have the values over here, strokes gained bucket 2. I started with last week bucket 2. This was something I talked about in the summary. And if we go back to the summary, I guess, let me throw a filter on that and just look at last week. Looking at this last week bucket 2, just the bucket 2 for last week, there was an 88.89% cut made percentage out of this bucket. So there were, I think, a total of 9 total guys in this bucket, and only 1 of them missed the cut. This is from 2020, 2019, and 2018. Those 3 years only. So 88.89% I thought was fantastic. So I right away decided I'm going with this bucket. And with an 88.89% cut made percentage, I wasn't so much worried about any of these guys missing the cut. In fact, it kind of got me enamored with Camilo Villegas. I think Camilo, I want to say I created 10 lineups. 9 of them had Camilo in it. And that wasn't even me. Like, I honestly didn't look at my exposures. I'm just like, yep, Camilo fits. 7,600, I'm working with Camilo. I just continued to do that. Again, I wasn't reviewing my lineups before I posted them, nothing like that. I started here and I said, I like these guys right here. Obviously, Sam Ryder finished second. If this got you on Sam Ryder, then you were sitting good. He's in the optimal lineup. He was in the GPP winning lineup. Chase Seifert was another guy I really liked. And I had no problem playing Chase Seifert. So what I ended up doing was I usually selected 2 or 3 of these guys. And most of the time it was Camilo. Had I just evened out the ownership between all of them, more likely I would have gotten to a pretty decent lineup. But I didn't. So unfortunately, it wasn't good. So I really started here. This is where I started. This is what kind of screwed me up. And then I don't remember exactly. I think I went to last week bucket 2s because there were a lot of golfers. Let me see if we go to last year. Going to last year bucket 2s. Yeah, so 73.08% cut made percentage and a 19.23% chance of getting inside the top 10. Now this bucket was a little larger than I mean, it was still pretty good, don't get me wrong. I still like this bucket. And the percentages kind of stay around what they were. So we have 2 out of 12 golfers inside the top 20. So it's not really so much top 10, 1 out of 12. What does that end up equaling? It's going to be just under 10%. Let's see. What are we looking at? 19. So it underperformed this year, but this is where I kind of came to next when I created lineups. I didn't actually touch any of these guys. I played a lot of these guys in between. So Charlie Hoffman basically anchored a lot of my lineups. Justin Suh was also there, and Alex Smalley, believe it or not, 6,800. I know a lot of you guys probably weren't on him, but I did play quite a bit of them. And same with Tyler McCumber. I have one lineup with Hudson Swafford in it. That was it. And it wasn't any good. So I think it was with a Camilo Villegas lineup. Again, when 90% of your lineups are Camilo Villegas and he misses the cut, chances are you're not going to win a lot of money. So unfortunately, he was mixed in with a lot of other guys that missed the cut. But this is the second place I went to. I went to the last year bucket 2 golfers. And of all these guys, this is kind of to my own detriment, I removed everybody except for the strokes gained bucket 2, 3, and 4 golfers. You can already see a 5 and a 3 are inside the top 20. So when I do this, I have a lot of middling finishes. It didn't really hurt me, but it also wasn't that great. So that's kind of what my strategy was coming into this. It was okay. I anchored my lineups with Camilo Villegas, and that's what screwed me. If I use the SweetSpot score, look at how good the finishing positions were. So we were on to something for this tournament. What the score ended up including was official world golf ranking, birdie or better, recent form, DK average, and scoring average. Really, if a golfer didn't have any stats like Thomas Peters up here, there was a stat there was just a number that I kind of hard coded, and it wasn't a number that was going to be that beneficial, but it was a number that was slightly better than the what do I want to say, like the 33 percentile, so like the bottom third within that stat. So it wasn't like it was doing them any favors. Thomas Peters ranked as high as he did because of his official world golf ranking. Same with Danny Willett. Both of these guys, and at least Danny has some birdie or better stats. At least he has stats, so that's why he shows up. But yeah, I mean, Danny Willett was a guy that I wanted a lot of because he was third on my ranked model. Same with Chase Seifert. I know I said I was going to mention him. Here's me mentioning him. He was 12th on my model. Sam Ryder, I already mentioned too. 34th on the model, but the fact that he was a last week bucket 2 really got me onto him. So I really liked him. And I guess needless to say, the sweet spot model worked here, and I might actually bring that into the next couple tournaments, because usually I add other things. I add grass stats, I add bogey avoidance, that kind of stuff. This time I just went with birdie or better, official world golf ranking, recent form, DK average, and scoring average, and it turned out to be pretty decent. So, I mean, this is the most green I've seen compared to red, so I like that. Obviously, green top 20, dark red is your missed cuts and withdraws, and then light red is just not a good finish. So, sweet spot score, perfect. And I think that's about it. That's all I want to talk about when it comes to the Corales Puntacana. So pretty decent there with, the process and everything. Let's see what the match play ended up. So you can see Billy Horschel's your winner. I guess my first thoughts about match play before I actually talk about this was, I'm a golf purist. Like, I'm sure most of you guys have seen that in these videos. I enjoy match play. I enjoy the change of pace. However, watching this tournament, and by the way, actually, no, I was going to say this is really the first year we've ever seen this. It isn't. Match play kind of has a way to, I don't even want to say like even out the playing field, but it does. And it does in the way that if a top tier golfer isn't playing well for a stretch of holes, just for a stretch of holes, and that happens, right? Even though, the good golfers understand how they hit certain shots or how to hit certain shots, sometimes they're just a degree off, and that degree off is bad, especially if it's when you're putting. If you're a degree off in putting and you're from 10 feet away, you're going to miss your putts no matter what, unless your read was terrible and it just gets you online. But that same thing applies with drivers. If you're a degree off, that's the difference. And if for a round, when you're out on the course and you're having these issues, you're not really able to turn it around, but you are playing against one other person. You're not playing against a field, so you can turn it around, but momentum really is carried on. When another golfer who's on their game can smell this, like say, a shark smelling blood in the water, those golfers are going to take advantage. So that was kind of the disappointing thing with match play. The guys here at the top, other than Scotty Scheffler, I don't think anybody was really rooting for any of these guys. And if you are one that liked Billy Horschel or Matt Kuchar, that's great. But I don't think it did the game any justice. It also made watching very difficult, especially when these guys are your last four, kind of trying to grind it out. 36 holes 2 days in a row. That is very tiring. And you could see it at the end of Sunday's round or at the end of Sunday's coverage. These golfers were playing bad golf. And it was just who could survive the longest. And obviously Billy Horschel was the one. So I'll show you the bracket. This is obviously just my bracket, how it went through, how I paired up everybody. I guess I don't really know the point of showing this. You guys obviously have access to doing this yourself. Yeah, there isn't anything that we really need to talk about. I mean, you could see the wins, the losses, the ties in their group play. And then the green is just the guys who ended up winning. Forgot to highlight one guy. So yeah, this is your bracket, but let's go ahead. Let's talk about the optimal lineup and the $5 GPP winning lineup. So let's go here. Match play is interesting when it comes to DraftKings points because obviously holes won gave you points. Streaks of holes won gave you points. Holes halved gives you points. Winning a match gives you points. And then obviously if you lose anything, you're going to lose points, but not a lot. So it really matters getting through all the way to the semifinals. So if I bring up that bracket, I guess that's the best way to do this. Let's just talk about the semifinals. Basically, you want to get everybody, all 6 of your golfers, into the quarterfinals and then, have the 4 that go on to the semifinals. So you want, these golfers here facing off. But the thing is, and I'm going to show you this. You didn't need to have the optimal lineup in order to win money. Like, you didn't have to have a match play optimal lineup, meaning having all 4 of your guys go to the or to the semifinals. You didn't need that. You also didn't need to have all 6 of your golfers go to the quarterfinals in order to win money. So, although the whole thought process and the whole conversation prior to this tournament or leading up into this tournament was make sure you're selecting golfers from each bracket, from each group, and then, anchoring your lineups that way. So make sure you have a golfer from quadrant 1, quadrant 2, quadrant 3, and quadrant 4. And then make sure in the other 2 golfers you have are in opposite, on the opposite side of those quadrants. So if you do pick, 2 golfers from quadrant 1, let me just show you, because I know it gets difficult trying to explain it. But if you have 2 golfers from this quadrant right here, make sure one is from here and the other one is from here. So on the opposite side. And that way it assures you that you can get 2 guys to the quarterfinals, which you want, because you want 6 of your guys at the quarterfinals. And obviously then 4, you want to have 4 out of 4 in the semis. Well, let me show you something. I'm going to show you this before we get in the optimal lineup, GPP winning lineup. No, we can't, because I have to show you the GPP winning lineup and the optimal. So keep what I just said in mind. I know it's kind of going back and forth, but I'll come back to it. The $5 GPP winning lineup used all $50,000 of your salary. It scored 812 points, and it consisted of all the golfers here highlighted in blue. So Billy Horschel, Scotty Scheffler, Victor Perez, Jon Rahm, Sergio Garcia, and Jordan Spieth. The golfers with the black tick marks in the top right-hand corner are part of the optimal lineup. The optimal lineup scored 921.9 points, and it used 43,700 of the salary. So 921, 812, a full 100 points above. Now, you're also not. I always preach this. You're never gonna leave like additional money on the table. So $6,000, $6,300. Are you really doing that? Probably not. I mean, are you anchoring your lineups with these 6 golfers, never sniffing the 8K range, 9K range, or even 10K range? No, of course not. You probably aren't. But it is reasonable to make a lineup close to 50,000, because a lot of times we can get close to the optimal lineup points. Match play is a little wonky though. We're not really going to sniff optimal lineup points. You saw that with the Corales Puntacana. We got really close. We were within 10 points of creating a realistic lineup versus the optimal lineup that way. So what I want to show you is, and because the $5 GPP winning lineup did not have Matt Kuchar, instead it had Jordan Spieth. So it selected Spieth instead of Kuchar. But the thing is, what if you didn't, what if we didn't pick Sergio Garcia and we went with Jordan Spieth and Matt Kuchar? So, if we selected these 4 golfers, came down to Jordan Spieth, and then had Jon Rahm. I mean, this is 48,400, so it's really still unrealistic. Maybe we get rid of Perez and we do Sergio. That's over. Okay. If I do this, I'm just going right to the winning lineup. What I'm trying to get at is this. So let's say, we had Kuchar, Perez. We didn't have Rahm. Let's say we had Fleetwood. We have these 6 guys here. So this equals 46,000. Spieth and Kuchar are in that same bracket. If we go to, let me go to the bracket. Sorry. And come up here to Jordan Spieth and Matt Kuchar. They're meeting in the round of 16. They're not in the opposite side of the group or of the quadrant. So right away, everything you were being told prior to this wouldn't make sense. That's not something we want to talk. We would never advise you to create a lineup like that. But if we did go Jordan Spieth, Matt Kuchar, Scotty Scheffler, Billy Horschel, Victor Perez, and even Tommy Fleetwood, we scored 907.7 points. We beat the $5 GPP winning lineup. Who did do that whole, making sure you're picking golfers from different quadrants. In fact, we could probably create a bunch of lineups that have golfers from the same quadrant. I think even if we pick Brian Harman, So if we went Brian Harman, Kuchar, and Spieth, all from this quadrant. Let's see. So Brian Harman. So we have these 6 golfers. This scores 885.3 points. This still beats the $5 GPP winning lineup by 70 points. And it has a lot to do with how they score their points. It's all about holes won. And how many holes did you beat a guy by in your matches? So this whole thought process of like making sure we select the right quadrants, you know, make sure we have one guy of each. I guarantee you, I bet you, let's see, let's bring in Bubba Watson. Let's see if we can, you know, make a lineup that wins that way. So we have Bubba Watson. We're going to select all those guys. And let's take out Victor Perez just for the hell of it. This scores 829.9 points. That beats the $5 GPP winning lineup. So whatever we talk about, so the logic behind it is sound. You do want to create lineups that way. You want to make sure you have a golfer from each quadrant because you're never going to get to the optimal lineup. But perhaps we shouldn't really care too much about that because as you can see, this lineup here is beating the $5 GPP winning lineup. And it selected 4 golfers who made it through their groups all in the same quadrant. So Kuchar, Spieth, Harman, and Watson. They all made it out of their groups, but they're all in the same quadrant. So like our lineups would be dead. We would think our lineups would be dead after the round of 16 because only 2 guys are advancing and then only 1 guy out of this group is going to advance further. But as you can see, Spieth, Watson, Kuchar. Oh, I didn't even select Harman, but I'm sorry. Harman is right there. I was off by 0.1 points and actually we go up some. All 4 of those guys are in the same quadrant. We still would have made money. You guys still would have made money picking lineups like that. I don't know if that's sound advice going forward, you know, but I think we could probably say if you have conviction plays, play them. If you're unsure about, you know, who might actually make it past, maybe go that route. I don't think, like, if I'm really thinking about it, I don't think that's the right way to approach this. Like, I don't care. I'm going to select 4 guys out of 1 quadrant. I probably wouldn't do that. Personally, I'm always chasing the optimal lineup, and there's no way you can get the optimal lineup that way, but you certainly can win money. You can certainly win a GPP not doing it that way. You can win a GPP selecting 4 golfers out of 1 quadrant. So keep that in mind. When I was like reviewing this, I thought that was crazy, but obviously it can be done. So this is the optimal lineup versus the GPP winning lineup, the highest entry fee that I joined. It's crazy. Match play is chaos. I thought it was going to be easier than what it was. I used my optimizer, which made sure that I was making optimal matchup lineups or match play lineups based off of selecting 1 guy from each quadrant every single time. So I would never have dead lineups, quote unquote dead lineups. And then I'm also creating lineups that are, picking those additional 2 golfers adjacent from, where the other golfers that are in that quadrant are, that are doubling up in that quadrant. So I was always assured that all my lineups would have the possibility of getting 6 guys to the quarterfinals, which you want. The thing is, it didn't really matter because it all matters by how much someone is beating another guy by, how many like streaks, that kind of stuff. Just like in regular DraftKings, streaks, rounds under 70, that kind of stuff, that matters more than, making sure you have the perfect optimal lineups, whatever. So anyways, let's move on. One thing to note, talking about optimal lineups and winning lineups, or just talking about lineups in general and how to create them, we did a lot of kind of digging into, historical salaries. Which ones show up more than another? This should not be 2021. Oh yeah, I did update it. I did put these here. As you can see, when we look at top 10 percentages, like which salary shows up inside the top 10 more than another. 7 to 8K and 7K. So really, it's just 7K and 6K. That's what this should read. 7K and 6K. 64.58% show up inside the top 10. And when we're looking at the top 10, everybody here, a ton of 6K golfers. Just a bunch of 6K golfers. How much? 8. 8 golfers show up inside the top 10. 8 of 16 show up inside the top 10. Let's add 7Ks with that. So we have 5 additional 7K golfers, leaving only 3 other golfers in the different salary buckets. So 9K, 8K, and 7 or in 10K. Everybody else is in the 7 and 6K. The historical salaries pointed that out. 60%, over half, usually inside the top 10, show up there. What doesn't really? 11 and up. Or 10K and up. Sometimes I just don't. I'll see this and I'm like, there's no way I'm building a lineup with just 6 and 7K golfers. With match play, that actually is a possibility. And in the future, that might be something I actually explore. Instead of getting really close to 50,000, perhaps I just, with the optimizer, select 2 or 3, hard code 2 or 3 6K golfers. I shouldn't even say it that way. I don't have the optimizer pulled up. It's going to take a little time to pull it up. But basically, if you were given the optimizer, if you select the minimum exposure, the minimum ownership of a particular bucket, like a pricing bucket, you could do that with your 6 and 7Ks. So obviously I could have done that, but I chose not to. I thought that would be crazy, so I didn't. This is the time to actually really listen to the historical salaries, because 6 and 7Ks showed up so much. Let's see here. Let's go ahead and get into the DK page and start out by looking at the SweetSpot score. Not good. Nobody that was at the top showed up inside the top 10. I shouldn't say that. There were a bunch of 5s. Sergio, Fleetwood, John Rahm, Jordan Spieth. But either way, we have no green, meaning top 4. In fact, we don't even get there until our 26th ranked guy. So really the SweetSpot score didn't really work out that well. But if we're being completely honest, even if we go by odds, the favorite golfers of this tournament didn't do well. DJ, Justin Thomas, Rory McIlroy, Bryson DeChambeau, all didn't make it past the pods. So I'm not really kicking myself for that. It doesn't really bother me that much that the SweetSpot score didn't do that well. This is match play. It's not stroke play. So I don't really anticipate, if we're talking about scores, I think some guys won matches being over par this week during their 18-hole or however long it took. Meaning other golfers that they're playing against were also over par, but it also didn't matter if they were, if they weren't. You could lose in match play if you're under par and your opponent's over par. It all depends on when you match each other's scores. I'm trying to do the math in my head. I'd have to double check that. I'm not going to make that declaration and give you 100% on that, but I'm pretty sure you can. Either way, SweetSpot score did not do well. I think it's probably worth talking about the buckets. Let's actually start. Let's start with the strokes gained buckets. Usually, like I said in the Corales Puntacana, we want to go left to right. We'll see more green, finding golfers from strokes gained bucket 1 than we are in any of the other buckets. But as you can see, only two guys out of 22 in strokes gained bucket 1 showed up inside the top 10. And they weren't even in the top 4. That is atrocious. That's so bad. Strokes gained bucket 2, we had our first and second place guys out of there. That makes sense. That's probably easy to get to. Strokes gained bucket 3, I would have anticipated seeing more guys doing well out of this bucket. I mean, 3 is not terrible. 3 out of each, that's pretty good. And again, this is negative putting. So one of the big takeaways were putting stats for match play. And if we're keeping track, we have 1, 2, 3 guys, because Victor Perez was in strokes gained bucket 4, which is positive putting and negative off the tee. 4 of those golfers or 3 of 4 showed up inside the top 10 or top 4. Sorry, top 4. Now, that is also to say in strokes gained bucket 1 mean everything is positive. Your positive putters are here as well. So that everything positive approach, positive around the green, positive off the tee, positive putting. All of those 4 stats are positive. That is what's in this bucket. And it didn't do well. But the other positive putting stats, strokes gained buckets, not terrible. And we come over here. I really didn't select anybody from strokes gained bucket 5, but Matt Kuchar obviously shows up. And then I chose nobody from strokes gained bucket 6. Antoine Rosner, he could have won that group. He could have won the group he was in. Instead, he ended up losing to Robert McIntyre, which obviously is 1 ahead of him. That's crazy. Actually, is that correct? No, that's not correct. That is not correct. I'm sorry. I think Antoine Rosner was in the Tommy Fleetwood bucket. That's right. So he lost to Tommy Fleetwood. But still, I would never have chosen any of these guys. You can see out of 64 guys, they're almost the 3 worst ranked guys. But almost 2 of them pull it off and get to the next. 1 of them does. And then strokes gained bucket 5. I'm really never touching this bucket, but all but 1 did poorly. It's just like match play does things in reverse. If we look at the rest of the buckets, if I go back to the DK page, obviously this is sorted by position top to bottom. And I only used 3 buckets, really. Strokes gained buckets, recent form buckets, last week buckets. So if we're only looking at the top 10 and not anyone else, really what I want to see is very few bucket 5s out of any of the buckets, either strokes gained, recent form, or last week. Right away, in the top 4, you have Matt Kuchar. He has 1 stat, strokes gained buckets, that are a 5. If we look further down, Tommy Fleetwood, that's another strokes gained bucket 5. But for the rest of the stats, really Eric Van Rooyen, he was the only guy inside the top 10 that had, a 5 or a 6 out of either of these buckets. So that's pretty good. The strokes gained buckets is just weird. We have 3 5s in there? It's just weird. I'm more comfortable selecting golfers that are 2s or 3s. We can't select a lot of them. This is as far as we really go. Ian Poulter, I suppose. Let's see, how many points could we have scored just by selecting those guys? And I know it would be kind of foolish and a little stupid to do this, but 757. We wouldn't have won a GBP. So it's good to see, but still scored pretty decent. Better than a lot of my lineups. So yeah, the buckets, I think with a limited field that's match play is just weird. I'm not taking really anything away from this match play thing. Other than either you go all in and just accept your fate if you do that, like on certain players. So if you had these 4 as your core, good on you. If you didn't, obviously nobody really did in the $5. If you just knew these guys were going to do well, then play them in all of your lineups. And if they don't do well, like say this result doesn't happen, then you live with your consequences. Or the only other way I can think of it, everybody gets the same exposure. Everyone gets equal exposure. I was kind of playing around with it this week, trying to figure out how would the optimizer select. It's always looking at the metric and it's always selecting the best, group of guys together. Combined with ownership, how do I get it where it equally grabs everyone equally? So if I put 10%, say that I put 10% for everybody. Well, the thing is, it's going to build lineups, and once it gets to its 10th lineup, after it builds the 10th lineup, it's going to say, hey, these 6 golfers are available again. So it's going to select the same 10 golfers every single time. So really, we're only going to have 10 unique lineups that way. So I was trying to figure out what is the math equation to it. I don't have it available for you guys, but basically you're looking at 64 golfers, and there are 6 unique, golfers you're selecting from. So I think you divide 6 by 64, and it would be, let's see, 116? 116? I think that's right. Yeah. So then you would divide 16 by 1 to get your percentage of how everything would work out. Where the optimizer is always going to select the unique 6 golfers every single time. And I don't have that math equation in front of me. I'll just do it on the calculator on my phone. So it would be 6.25%. That's what would be like equal ownership all the way through, which isn't terrible. I might do that next time for the next match play, or during the President's Cup or Ryder Cup. I'm gonna see if that works out, because I wasn't happy with my results. I went heavy on Rory. I went heavy on Cantlay. None of it was good. So I'm not gonna beat myself too much up over this. And I say I went heavy on those guys. 30% is all I did, which was not good enough, obviously. So I think that's gonna really wrap it up. I have nothing really else to offer. I would look at every stat, but with 64 golfers, the strokes gained buckets do it for you. So obviously I'm talking about everything positive. If I really wanted to, sure, I suppose we can. Just to show you guys what that looks like. Strokes gained bucket 1. And we look at everybody for season long stats. If we select everybody in this group, not tee to green, but everything going down, obviously you can see everything is positive. Everything is above 0 for these stats. So if we scroll down to the 2s, Billy Horschel was there. You can see there are negative stats somewhere in these 2 columns here. But you have positive off the tee, positive putting. And then strokes gained bucket 3 are just golfers with positive off the tee, negative putting, and so on and so forth. Obviously, you see that with the strokes gained buckets. Normally, what I like to do is just sort from top to bottom and just show you how their result ended up. I suppose what I should do is freeze it on this column and now scroll over. If we're looking at the top stats here, so strokes gained, I did it by tee to green. Let's just go strokes gained off the tee, top to bottom. We have 2 golfers that show up inside the top 4 plus 2 others. So maybe you get there, but the fact of the matter is, out of 20, you had to select 4. That's never good. Those aren't good percentages, especially when there are a lot of favorites there. Approach. Did you think approach mattered? No, it didn't. 5, 9, everybody else didn't make it out of their pod. That's what the red color means. So yeah, approach was not the route you wanted to go. How about around the green? Sure, we have 1 guy that finished inside the top 4. But again, 4 out of 20 guys, you have to select the right 4. That's not good either. How about putting? Putting doesn't really show up either. 3 out of the top 20 guys in this putting stat showed up inside the top 10. And really only 1 showed up 4th. So you can't really look at your top stats when trying to select golfers here, not at least for this tournament. And I mean, I bring this up all the time because it's like, don't beat yourself up. Try not going that route. The best way that I can think about doing is by strokes gained buckets. Looking for different combinations of golfers. So that's all I really have. I'm going to definitely put that in the timeline or in the timestamps as looking over every top 20 stat. I know it was quick, but yeah, there really isn't anything to talk about here. It was weird. It was unpredictable. Nobody, I mean, you saw the $5 winning GPP lineup, didn't even have the optimal lineup. It wasn't even close. There were several lineups that could have beaten it. So like there's really, yeah, I don't want to waste time here. There's nothing to talk about with the match play. So, hey, if you want the optimizer for the Masters, all you got to do is like this video within YouTube, like it. You got to be subscribed. So subscribe, like, and then reach out to me. Email me at SweetSpotDFS or SweetSpotDFS@gmail.com. Email me saying you want the optimizer for the Masters, and I will definitely provide it for you. But I do need a like. Actually, you know what? I need you to subscribe, like, and comment, and then email me. So those 4 steps, and I will definitely give you the optimizer for the Masters. If you're on Twitter, like and share, like and retweet, and I'll reach out to you. So that is all you have to do, and that's all I have for you guys. I told you it wasn't going to be that long. We're at 45 minutes. This is actually between 2 tournaments, shorter than most of my reviews. So hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Please leave a like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I'll see you in the next one. All right, bye.